Welcome my friends and viewers to another book review here on Legendlore. Today we're going to be taking a look at Slewfoot by Gerald Brom, a historical/dark fantasy and horror book set in New England during puritanical times, which focuses on a young woman's encounters with a forest-born, almost druidic entity, and her reconciling her origins with that of the new presence of Christianity. We'll be going over my impressions before reading, a quick spoiler-free review, a deeper dive that includes spoilers and covers the positives and negatives that I had with the book, before finally landing on my overall rating. With that said, let's not waste any time and get started. Regarding my impressions before reading, based on the cover art alone, I felt that this book was going to be very witchy and very inspired by Druidic or even Celtic myth. I wasn't 100% sure on the presence of puritanical themes, but the cover's depiction reminded me a lot of movies such as The Witch or Midsummer regarding the outfit, the flower crown, and so on. I'll be honest, I almost cracked this book open on the art alone, and the author Gerald Brom's illustration style has become an immense inspiration for me as of late. It's painterly, it conveys a very strong mood, and I feel like every piece of his kind of tells a story or portrays an interesting character in different ways. Being an author-illustrator is also something that I wish to aspire to be one day, so there's also that. Now for my spoiler-free review. One of my favorite things about this book was its pacing. It was fast and effective, but not so much that everything was a blur and that the world and characters weren't fully thought out or embodied. It was just detailed enough to be compelling, but fast enough that I always felt like something was happening and that the plot was always making progress. With that said, warning, if you are triggered by insects, horror based on food and bugs, hysteria, gaslighting, sexism, and patriarchy due to the puritanical timeline, I would not recommend this book as it will be a struggle to get through at times, and there isn't any content warning list at the beginning to inform you about it. Finally, this book does have a very good discussion about Christianity and how it interacted with more ancient religions like Wicca, Celtic paganism, and even a little bit of shamanism. It also serves as a great inspiration for druids, fae, and forest spirit depictions in my own writing as well as in my D&D games. If you're looking for something to kickstart the imagination regarding the old ancient ways facing off against the regimented nature of organized religion, this is going to be a great read for you. Now let's move on to the synopsis and the more in-depth, spoiler-filled review. If you guys don't want to have this book spoiled for you and just want to skip to my final rating, please click to the timestamp located right over here. With that said, the story of Slewfoot focuses on a woman by the name of Abatha, living in puritanical times in New England and running a farm with their husband, Edward. Abatha had a mother who was a medicine woman and practiced some form of Celtic paganism, the nature of which is unfortunately not clarified over the course of the book. Abatha carries this tradition on and holds a token of her mother in the form of a tied length of braids of hair from previous mothers and grandmothers within her family. Her husband, Edward, has a problematic relationship with his older brother, Wallace, who constantly undermines and manipulates him through ownership of the farm that once belonged to their father. Abatha convinces Edward to stand up to Wallace when he attempts to try and have Edward sell the farm to cover a debt that he's made. At the same time that this is occurring, three fae-like forest spirits, Creek, Sky, and Forest, who are depicted as half animal and half humanoid, work to resurrect an ancient forest being to kill the nearby humans and take back the land. They feed the beast Abatha and Edward's goat, Samson, and eventually kill Edward himself and feed him to it as well, which grants the creature the head of a goat, but the body and mental cognition of a man. With Edward gone, Abatha is forced to take on the farm alone, and must make enough yield of crop to pay off the last of Edward's debts to Wallace, which would allow her to be able to gain full ownership over the farm. She struggles, but the forest creature approaches, and after some initial terror, helps her grow enough crops and food to make her debt, despite Wallace's constant attempts to undermine her. She ends up naming him Samson after the goat. Eventually, after failing to both intimidate her and steal her crops, Wallace turns to calling her a witch out of desperation, riling up the entire town and causing her to be put on trial, which draws in several other villagers who she had helped and helped her in turn to be accused as operating as agents of Satan. People who disdained Abatha for both her beauty and circumventing puritanical beliefs also jump on the bandwagon. Meanwhile, Samson struggles with amnesia and not being able to remember his identity, stuck between either being a local deity that was revered and worshipped by the people, or a murderous beast who slew people by the dozens. In pursuit of the truth, he encounters a Native American shaman named Mamunapect, who is revealed to be the one who initially imprisoned him at the beginning of the story and puts him into sleep, but not before revealing that Samson was originally loved by the people, but the people kept on asking more and more, becoming greedy. The spirits Creek, Sky, and Forest fed him a bloody mixture that threw him into a murderous frenzy, before Mamunapect arrived and put him into slumber to end his rampage, whilst also drawing upon his power for himself. As such, Creek, Sky, and Forest worked together to free Samson from his sleep, allowing him to kill Mamunapect and regain all of his memories and his aspects. After that, Samson attacks and saves Abatha as she is being hung by the ankles to die for witchcraft, granting her his powers and transforming her into a satyr-like creature before the two take their vengeance upon the entire town, and all those who had caused their suffering, ranging from the town gossip to the corrupt magistrate, Wallace and his family who lied to get Abatha arrested, and the abusive guards and sheriff who took pleasure in tormenting Abatha. So overall, it's a very cathartic and happy ending. First, let's talk about the things that I liked about the book. As I said earlier, the pacing was very fast but effective. It only lingered on key moments and it felt like a fast but compelling read. This is a style that I always attempt to try and replicate whenever I'm writing because I want the world to feel real and lived in, but I also don't want to waste the reader's time with needless detail. The depiction of fae and forest spirits like creek, sky, and forest as humanoid and animalistic hybrids was really creative, and I want to use it for my D&D games. And the author was actually kind enough to include art of each character at the end of the book, which I think is really, really awesome. The struggle of Abatha to maintain ownership of the farm, her development of her friendship with Samson, and Samson's warring between the aspects of life-giving protector and murderous slayer were all excellent arcs to experience. Wallace was also a very effective villain because, while his motivation to control the farm was to pay off his own debts, it was also punctuated by the guilt over the loss of both his father and his brother. You could understand why he was doing what he was doing, even if he was a sexist, conniving, arrogant prick while doing it. The vengeance for Abatha at the end was as satisfying as it was wonderfully brutal, lending both catharsis to her journey, but also showing how she was allowed to have anger and wrath at how she was treated. I feel most stories push the narrative of the main character not taking vengeance in order to feel some sort of moral superiority over the rest of the antagonists, and this book wasn't afraid to refuse to do that. I also liked how Samson's bodily form is modified based on the things that he eats, such as getting a goat head by eating Abatha's goat and then becoming more humanoid by eating her husband. I love how what a creature eats informs their abilities and their powers, because I feel like it lends more importance to their diet beyond just eating to survive. It sort of reminds me of Netflix's Dracula, where Dracula himself was able to gain skills and abilities based off those people he drank. One of the other details that I loved about this book was that it showed that while the puritanical times were monstrous and brutal, there were Christian folks who were genuinely good and defended those who were accused, and that those in power used their sway to make the hysteria work for them, such as the case with Wallace and the magistrate. I feel like a lot of books sometimes tend to just vilify Christianity outright, which, while understandable, makes the conversation a lot more black and white, when there is always going to be a lot of gray in between these different groups of people in these organizations. Now, in terms of what I didn't like about the book and what I thought could be improved, whereas the first two-thirds of the book were very nice and evenly handled and focused more on the day-to-day life, the last third was a little bit heavy-handed with Abatha's suffering and the malevolence of her accusation, but I can see that that was ideal in order to illustrate the hysterical nature of those times. Along with that, the character of Mamunapet, the Native American shaman who served as a sort of secondary villain, kind of felt out of place and meant to serve more as a plot device to explain Samson's imprisonment more than anything else. While Brom was keen to keep the Native American representation to a minimum, I can't really speak to the accuracy of its depiction, considering that I am not Native American myself, nor do I know a lot of that history and that culture. But I did note that the only instances of Native American characters were Mamunapet himself, and some of the henchmen that Wallace hires to help him steal the corn, and that may not exactly be flattering to people of those demographics, but it could also be reflective of how these people were sort of forced into these roles due to the overarching presence of white folk and Christianity, and thus had to do what they needed to do in order to survive. Finally, while I had said that Abatha getting her vengeance and turning into a forest creature was earned and satisfying, I did feel that it kind of painted both her and Samson in a little bit more villainous role, rather than people who had found their natural element and finally realized their true, full ascended forms. I do wish that Brom had made it seem less like an indulgence and more like true justice served. But I also don't exactly know how I would even go about doing that, so I am happy with what we got. With all that in mind, my final rating for Slewfoot by Gerald Brom is a 5 out of 5 stars. It's a solid, low-scope tale about the natural world, ancient religions, and its interaction with both civilization and organized Christianity. It covers demonization, hysteria, and man's relationship with often overtaking from nature in service to himself. And I found its low-stakes focus in a small town and the trials of a single woman to be very refreshing from the end-of-the-world power-filled fantasy books that I've been reading as of late. With that said, that's our review of Slewfoot by Gerald Brom, everybody. I want to thank all of you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe, and press the little bell icon to be notified of future videos. But please comment down below if you guys have read the book, if you liked it, if you hated it, as well as what other kind of books you guys would like me to personally check out and possibly review on the channel, as well as what you guys would like to see overall in incoming videos. But until then, I'll see you guys next time.